Sam LaPorta got into the end zone twice on Thanksgiving, but we'll tell you why we're still disappointed in his performance on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. On today's show, we are breaking down all of the action from the 3 Thanksgiving games. I hope you guys had a fantastic Thanksgiving. We are stuffed. We are full of turkey, but we're still going to break down all of the NFL slate. Okay, let's start with the first game, Detroit-Chicago. Easily the best game that we had of the 3. The Lions win 23-20. Sam LaPorta caught 2 touchdowns in this game, but why are we still disappointed in his fantasy performance?
I mean, if you just checked the final score at the end of the day, you are going to close up shop and say Sam LaPorta is so back. But you look at the stat line then and you're like, oh, that's not as great as I thought it was. 3 catches, 6 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. 2 of his 3 catches were touchdowns. And while you might say like, hey, great efficiency, that's not sustainable. We already know like touchdowns are extremely volatile on a week-to-week basis. But I'm growing more and more concerned that like the thing that is teetering Sam LaPorta to fantasy relevance this year is just touchdowns. If we took away his touchdown on any given week, he does not receive enough volume. He does not produce enough yardage right now to be a viable fantasy tight end. Like, I think there's a lot of reasons to be very concerned here, but like, let's say I have a contending roster with Sam LaPorta and Jonnu Smith. I'm starting Jonnu Smith rest of season. Like, it's not even particularly close.
So this was a little bit of the issue last year. Now it wasn't as severe, but he was basically a tight end that was built on touchdowns. He scored 10 touchdowns last year. I think he only had 2 100-yard receiving games. But Kate, this year, it's all been touchdowns, 5 touchdowns this year. He's gone over 55 receiving yards twice this season. And that was a couple of weeks ago when he went 6 for 66 and a touchdown. There have just been more games of him under 20 receiving yards than him over 50 receiving yards. And that tells you a lot about where we're at in this offense. And I think one of the big concerns is he's just not getting the targets that he had last year. Last year, he had 120 targets. This year, Kate, you want to guess at how many targets he's at through week 13?
This is just like totally off the top of my head. 50?
44 targets right now for Sam LaPorta. He's just not involved in the offense. And for whatever reason, Ben Johnson has relied more on Tim Patrick. Jameson Williams is starting to play more and be more effective. Even Amon-Ra St. Brown isn't getting the same number of targets. I think it's just because this offense is more efficient than maybe it was last year, and they're running the ball more. The touchdowns are nice, but you can't start a player that's averaging 3 targets a game at the tight end position. I have no problem at all if you want to consider him somebody that you're benching week to week moving forward until we see that role in the offense grow.
Yeah, I mean, the Detroit Lions here so far in the season running the 2nd highest run percentage play rate. I think that's got a lot to do with it. This is just the kind of football that the Detroit Lions want to play. They have 2 really, really top end running backs that both offer kind of these different skill sets, but both can get into the end zone any given play. One maybe based on more of the physicality component. One has the burst. Like, they've got something really special in the run game. And I think that has taken a lot of pressure off the passing game. it's led it to be a lot more efficient, which like can sometimes be good for fantasy, but like we all know that the pathway to consistency is not by continuing to rely on efficiency. It's
Yeah.
volume in the game of fantasy. So I am kind of a little bit nervous because I think that this is they're playing good football. This is the type of football I think they want to play. I don't think like if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing. So Sam LaPorta, widely regarded as tight end one heading into this season for good reason. Right now, in the month of November, being drafted on average tight end 3 over on dynastyleaguefootball.com. How are you, like, temperature check? Because Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, Sam LaPorta, TJ Hawkinson, like, does that range still feel right?
I mean, so I think there's a massive gap between Bowers and McBride. And I think we talked about this in previous episodes. I think the gap between Bowers and McBride is bigger than any other gap among any other positions. And then I think there's a pretty big gap from McBride down to tight end 3. I probably would still take LaPorta as tight end 3, betting on this offense long term, betting on him. But I don't feel great about it. I mean, I certainly don't have a gap between him and Dalton Kincaid and him and TJ Hawkinson. So it's gotten to the point, Kate, where he's almost untradeable right now until he starts to prove that he can be a bigger part of this offense.
Yeah, and this is like, again, Sam LaPorta, love the talent so much. So I'm not giving up on him. I think tight end 3 feels right in Dynasty right now. Not an asset that I'm going to trust in a big way
No.
to carry me to my championship because it is a volatile road. And we haven't seen necessarily quite as high a ceiling. Like, has yet to crack 15 fantasy points in a single game this year. Multiple games with, 2 catches. Like, the floor is so much lower than it initially was as a rookie. I think, maybe health has played into this. Sam LaPorta started out the year not at 100%. So maybe this is, also them just kind of managing their tight end's health throughout a very long season when he starts out banged up. So like, I'm not fully panicking. I'm not panicking from a dynasty standpoint, but if I'm a contender, I'm probably looking to secure an insurance option here to carry me through the playoffs.
One more thing in this Chicago-Detroit game. Rome Odunze, 2 catches for 25 yards and 6 targets. Now, he's gotten quite a few targets over the last couple of weeks. I'm looking at it right now, 26 targets in the last 3 games. You'll take that. He's been very involved, but the efficiency hasn't been there. 25 yards, 39 yards, 65 yards against the Packers, 23 yards. If you have Rome Odunze on your team, you likely spent a top 5 rookie pick on him. Are you panicking? If you don't have Rome Odunze, are you going out and trading for him now? What's the play here?
I'm absolutely trading for Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze was one of my favorite wide receiver prospects in this class. I had him ranked ahead of Malik Neighbors, and I know maybe on the stat sheet that seems like an absolutely crazy premise, but I love Rome Odunze, the receiver, just so much. He has such a balanced game, and he is so balanced in the way that he plays football. He is technically so sound, and I do think that we're looking at a situation where, like, we're at the floor, right? I don't think it can get much worse than it has in Chicago. I love that we're starting to see Caleb Williams, had some yardage, right? Like, hasn't translated to success for Rome Odunze, but he's 22 years old. He's 6'3", 215 pounds. He can run. He's got great hands. Like, he is a really talented wide receiver. I'm betting on that talent in what I think is an offense that's on its way up.
You're waiting till next year. You're waiting
Oh
until
yeah, you should have no expectations right now. But like, if you're also like, I'm going to guess that a lot of dynasty managers out there, if you had other options, you also probably haven't been starting DJ Moore. Like, there's been very little consistency here in this there's Bears offense that, like, I don't think, when you're looking at this this crew, they haven't gotten you to the fantasy playoffs anyway. So yeah, you're not hoping that they win you something here in 2024. This is an investment in the future.
I agree. And I think Chicago's going to hire an offensive minded head coach, whether that's Ben Johnson. Don't see that happen, or Mike McCarthy if the Cowboys don't bring him back. I think once that hire happens and we start talking up this offense about what the new offensive minded head coach is going to do, we're going to see Rome's value go up. So I think you're right. Like, now is the time to trade for him, maybe with his value a little bit suppressed. Okay, let's do a speed round and let's talk about some other games, including my Dallas Cowboys, who finally got another win. Don't give me that face. Listen, I got to enjoy the little wins when I can. Let's talk about Rico Dowdle next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is my favorite ticketing app. It's the only ticketing app that I use when I want to go see my favorite teams play live. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time has so many awesome features. One of my favorites is the all-in pricing. It's going to show you your total up front, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Plus, they have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are breaking down all of the action from Week 13 on Thursday. Kate, let's go over to this Cowboys-Giants game. Not a lot of takeaways here. I did have a couple that I wanted to mention. Rico Dowdle, I thought, looked really good. 22 carries for 112 yards and a touchdown. He also caught 3 passes for 11 yards. Since becoming the quote-unquote RB1 for Dallas, he's put together some really good games. Last week against Washington, 19 for 86. He's somebody that I think you can feel confident in starting the rest of the year. But if you listen to our Tuesday show, he is somebody that I'm not valuing in 2025 and beyond, because this is such a deep draft in terms of running backs. And I got to believe the Cowboys are going to be drafting one early.
I mean, yeah, it takes one look at the Cowboys mock drafts, and just about everybody has Ashton Jeanty going to the Dallas Cowboys here, round 1.
Okay.
Bold if true, big if true, but I think that does seem like a move that's on par with the Cowboys. Like, Marcus, you're the Locked On Cowboys guy. I think you have to admit that would totally be on brand for the Dallas Cowboys. And for a team, for Jerry Jones, an owner who's been very widely criticized for like a lack of investment in the run game this offseason, I have a feeling he's going to like hyper correct course here. And
do the Cowboys hate me? That's the question. Do the Cowboys actually hate me? Because if they do that, it would be a mistake. Oh, well.
But yeah, Rico Dowdle definitely not going all in. I mean, you've got to be really happy if he was on your bench and, you know, you're able to flex him any given week, but definitely not looking at him for long-term value.
And Kate, if we're inching closer to the fantasy playoffs, you look at Dallas's schedule moving forward. And again, the Cowboys aren't going to make the actual NFL playoffs, but at 5-7, they are still technically in the hunt. Technically, their next 3 games are Bengals, Panthers, Bucks. None of those 3 teams have like terrifying defenses at all. I think Rico Dowdle is almost at the point where, given his volume and his efficiency over the last couple of weeks, I think you kind of have to start him.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, Dynasty, usually deeper benches, usually deeper lineup settings. Like, you're probably starting Rico Dowdle. I don't think there's any problem there.
Let's talk about Malik Neighbors, who right now I believe is wide receiver 3 in Dynasty League football, behind Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. Is that correct? I don't have it pulled up right now, but I think it's either wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4. But he's significantly ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Brian Thomas. And Kate, this is with another game, 13 targets, but 8 catches for 69 yards. It's been a good season for Malik Neighbors, but from a fantasy perspective, he has not scored a touchdown since week 3. He has not gone over 70 receiving yards since they played the Steelers back on, was that October 28th? This is hard because I love the talent of Malik Neighbors, but the quarterback situation is so bad. Do you trust the Giants to figure this thing out before or relatively soon in 2025, 2026?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to get Malik Neighbors a quarterback that can at least deliver him a football. Are they going to get him primetime Aaron Rodgers? No, but I'm sure they're going to get him a quarterback that can at least put a ball in the same zip code for him to catch. So like Malik Neighbors, no worries for me long term.
Okay. Let's go over to this Packers Dolphins game. Jonnu Smith, 10 catches for 113 yards. Okay, he's been awesome the last 3 games. 113 yards against Green Bay, 87 and a touchdown against New England, 101 and 2 touchdowns against the Raiders. Moving forward for the rest of the season, how many tight ends are you starting over Jonnu Smith?
I mean, on the real, like it's Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, probably TJ Hawkinson, and that's it. George Kittle. But even George Kittle, like he hasn't been healthy. So yeah, it's probably those guys and then end list.
The thing is Jonnu's been pretty involved in this offense since Tua has come back to the lineup. 5 for 46, 3 for 45, 6 for a 101, 9 for 87, 10 for 113. He's just getting a bunch of targets. And as long as Tua is healthy, it seems like he's a kind of a perfect fit in this offense because he can make plays in the middle of the field. He can make plays after the catch. I think you're confidently starting him as a top 5 tight end every single week moving forward. The only question is this a long-term play? Do the Dolphins re-sign Jonnu Smith and make him a feature point in their offense moving forward? I think they probably should.
I think they probably should because, like, let's be honest, tight end has not been a position that they've often had an answer to. Like they really have kind of, I think, generally neglected tight end over the past few years, and I think we're seeing, a really interesting transformation here in this offense. Adds another level of dynamic playmaking, takes some pressure off of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. It takes pressure off of every other outlet within the passing game here. So unlocking that area over the middle of the field, you add in the fact that you have Achane there, like it's great for Tua. It's great for all of these aspects. But I mean, Jonnu Smith, like not only are the counting stats, if you will, all there, ranks 8th in receptions, 5th in receiving yards, 2nd in yards after the catch among all tight ends, 5th in fantasy points per game, despite the fact that like this recent performance has been recent. 4th in yards per route run. He's been the real deal. The efficiency metrics back it up. I think, I kind of want a piece of Jonnu. And I got to say, Marcus, I had an article back in, I think it was June.
Come on, brag.
I got to brag for PFF that said, like, when I'm looking at the advanced metrics over the past couple of seasons, maybe the opportunities haven't been ideal, but the advanced stats have told us that Jonnu Smith was the real deal. So like, this isn't a new thing. I had Jonnu Smith as a potential breakout at the age of 29, because when you take a bigger look at what he's done with the limited opportunities, it tells a much different story than the one that you might think you have when you're just kind of looking at the very few fantasy points you're getting. I think he's the real deal.
Last thing before we move on, Devon Achane. We knew that there was going to be a drop in efficiency because there's just no way that he was going to be able to average 7.8 yards per rush in year 2. It's down to 4.1 this year, which is actually a little bit below average. So you get from best all time to below average. However, he hasn't lost any fantasy value because he has 6 receiving touchdowns this year, 430 receiving yards. But what do you make long-term for Devon Achane?
I'm going to be honest. My biggest takeaway here is maybe not even about Devon Achane. I think it's about the fact that I think there's room for a running back in this offense. So if you are a Jalen Wright believer, I think this is a great time to buy because, again, like the fantasy points are there for Devon Achane, which I think just kind of, if you're not watching the game, you're not watching him get stuffed, you're not watching, you're not worried about the box score inefficiencies because he's producing so much through the air. I mean, they're basically utilizing him as a slot receiver, and like that's fine. That will score me fantasy points. But if they want to truly establish the run, it doesn't seem like Achane's probably the answer. So my biggest takeaway is that there's room for somebody to emerge as the true kind of primary runner in this game. Like I don't think Raheem Mostert is the answer at this point. Maybe he's too old, too broken, what have you. But they did invest. They traded a future, I believe, third round pick, a 2025 third round pick to trade up in the fourth round this year to draft Jalen Wright. We said that was kind of the perfect scheme fit, right? It's kind of gadgety, gizmo-y, and kind of matches a little bit of the weirdness that you see out of Tennessee where everything's just kind of wide open and you have so many weapons and you've got all this speed. Like it was a great fit. So just seeing this, even though it's not translating to production for Jalen Wright, I have to imagine if he continues to take a step forward in his overall development, that there is space for him to create a big time role.
All right, okay, let's do some commotion. Players that we are promoting from our bench to our starting lineups in week 13. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and you can get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And this is a great week to start betting on the NFL. We've got an amazing Sunday slate of action, including Kate Steelers against the Bengals. In the late afternoon slot, Ravens Eagles, which is an absolutely fantastic game. And then on Sunday night, 49ers in the Bills. Go to FanDuel.com and never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, make sure you check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Kate, let's finish up here with some commotion. Players that we are promoting from our bench into our starting lineups in week 13. Who do you got?
I'm rolling with Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who has been one of the weirdest recent comeuppances in our weird game of fantasy football. Did not start his season out with the New Orleans Saints, but man, once he joined up, he had every opportunity. There is, all the room in the world for a pass catcher to make a difference here in this game for the Saints. He has seen his snap share increase each of the last few weeks. Been super efficient. I don't know if we can expect like multiple, 40-yard plus touchdowns this week, but I think, from a volume standpoint, it's probably going to it'd be hard to find plays as deep as this that have the potential to walk away with 8+ targets in a game.
I like that call. I'm a fan. I want to go to deep running back, Kamani Vidal. For the Los Angeles Chargers. Again, you might be up against it at running back. Maybe you have Breece Hall, who might not play this week. Kamani Vidal is I believe it was a 6th-round pick by the Chargers. Has not played much this year. He had a 4-game stretch where he did see the field a little bit, but with J.K. Dobbins out And with Gus Edwards just being old, not very good anymore, they might need to use Vidal as like the receiving down back. And he is somebody that I think could get on the field. And in this game against the Falcons, which I think is going to be a little bit high scoring, I think Vidal is an interesting deep flex play if you need a running back.
Definitely. I'm not like super stoked about the fact that it has, you never like when there's a player that you're kind of excited about and it takes like an injury to get them just even in the active column on any given
It's not
week.
great. It's not great.
It's not great. So I don't know how much faith he has in or from his head coach, Jim Harbaugh, but again, like volume is king sometimes, and he's got the opportunity to hold on to some of this volume. Let's head to Monday Night Football, where the Broncos are hosting the Cleveland Browns, and Cleveland Browns secondary has not been the same. I mean, this whole defense just not been the same unit. Bo Nix is playing extremely well. I think you fire him up, no questions asked. But if you're looking for a deeper play, I think 45-year-old rookie Devon Villay, who I don't think
he was one of my as well. I like this call.
I think he's 25, but the point still stands. He's a pretty old rookie. But he's played pretty well in recent weeks. I think he's becoming more of a consistent option here in the offense. And I just like this opportunity up against this secondary that I don't think is very good, averaging 45 receiving yards per game, only one touchdown this season, but like I like the opportunity there that he's kind of having, given he ranks second in receiving yards on this team. He's only played 8 games this year. So like, he's made a lot of, I think made a lot with little, maybe.
My last guy here is I'm going to trust Kayshon Boutte this week. So one of the reasons I like Kayshon Boutte is that he had before week 12, 4 straight games with at least 6 targets. And again, 6 targets is not a lot, but it's not nothing either. Going up against this Colts team where their secondary has been decimated all year, I think the Patriots are going to be able to throw in this one. And I think Boutte, who has been somebody who's played a lot in this offense, even last week, he only had 1 target, but he played in 60 of 69 possible snaps in that game. I think Kayshon Boutte is somebody who I want to put in my lineup and just see, because partly I just believe in Drake May. And at some point, this offense is going to click. And if you get a starting receiver that's on the field a bunch, you just never know.
I mean, I think there are worse calls. Like availability is, like you've got to be on the field. You got to be running routes for the chance to score fantasy points. This is an up and coming offense with a quarterback that I think is more than capable of delivering a football. I like the call. I have honestly been kind of pleasantly surprised to see him get this much playing time.
Getting a lot of work as well. You're getting that many targets. It's not like you're just a part-time player,
No, and Kayshon Boutte, like, let's not forget that this is not a guy that we ever thought had skill issues, right? Like, you look at the draft capital and you wonder, maybe if you don't remember back to his LSU days, like the skill is not the issue here with Kayshon Boutte. So to see him getting consistent opportunities, I have to envision that this coaching staff probably feels like he's maturing here in his NFL career, on and off the field, hopefully. And we know he's got the physical skill set to be a really talented player when he's focused.
Absolutely. All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Check out the channel on YouTube. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy Black Friday football. Enjoy an awesome Sunday of football. We'll be back on Monday to break it all down. We'll see you guys then.